Hey, Justin Larson here. I wanted to show you the next step I made on this knife. Last time I posted a video on Facebook, I had just melted and made the next piece of the knife. There's the piece that I've shaped out. It's going to be sanded a little bit more when I go to build the handle. But I got the handguard and the next brass piece. Typically, brass was put in there not only to make the knife look cool, but a softer metal than the steel itself tended to absorb shock in the metal as you were chopping or doing whatever you needed to do. But I guess I should show you how I actually got to this point. First knife I ever made was, well, a piece of junk. I made it out of junk iron. I thought you could just go to Ace Hardware and buy a piece of metal and cut it into something and grind it into something and then you could have a knife. Well, I was way wrong. First time I made a knife, I just hit a knot in a piece of wood and it bent the edge of the knife. So I quickly figured out that I need to find some real steel. And I did a little bit of research, and what I found out is a steel called 5160 steel, which is spring metal, but it was really only used in the 1950s and the 1960s from U.S. auto manufacturers. So I had to go to the junkyard, and I bought a couple of sets of leaf springs for like $15, and I've had enough steel to make knives for, it's been a couple of years. So the first thing I needed to do was figure out a way to heat this up and get it orange hot or non-magnetic, which means it's so hot that a magnet no longer sticks to it. And well, how was I going to do that? Well, a little more practice and work. I built this charcoal forge, which is pretty simple. It's just a 5-gallon metal container. And I cut in half and flipped them over. Found a little fan source. You can use a fart fan, you can use a blow dryer, anything that's going to move some air through this pipe that I have drilled 1/4-inch holes into about every inch. And I made this forge to accept metal at least up to 18 inches. And the reason why is because, well, you can make an 18-inch knife, heat it up, or you can block off some of these holes and make a smaller knife because you don't want to be burning your charcoal up unnecessarily. So this forge is very efficient. And where do you get charcoal? Well, you can either buy it at the store, not charcoal briquettes, but or you just make your own charcoal. I just get some firewood, put it in a barrel and burn it until it's down to charcoal chunks, and then I spray the fire out, and I take the charcoal and I just put it on a screen and I spread it out and wash it off, put the fire out, and put all the coals out, and it really gets soaked, but it puts everything out and washes all the ash off, and you let it dry for a few days. Next thing you know, you've got charcoal you can burn in your forge. So what the next step is after you heat it up several times, it takes to heat up your knife and pound it out into the rough shape that you want. What I typically do is I'll cut a piece of metal, piece of the spring out, roughly the size of the knife that I'm trying to build, and roughly the shape, not very much, because the rest of it you can pound out in shape, almost like Play-Doh, only a lot harder. And so I use an old cowboy's anvil. This is an old horseshoeing anvil. It's got the very hard flat surface. It's got this thing you can do some shaping on, but I also have some other couple pieces of metal that you can do a little bit of shaping on as well, for finger choils and stuff like that. Then once you get the knife to where you want it, it does not look like that. It looks like crap. So once you think you got your knife where you want, you got to clean it up. And pretty much what I do is I use a few different ways to do it. I use some grinders. We've got various little apparatuses that I can put on this drill press here to shape your knife, do things that you want, how to make it look good. And the most important thing is I've got some sanders that will sand and shape steel and wood, which is good because you can use this to shape your handle as well once you get to that point. So with this particular knife, I'm at the stage where I need to actually, make a handle. Well, I found this at a wood store. It's a chunk of walnut. You can see this little old piece here cost $5, but that was all right. So it's going to make about 5 knife handles. So the next pieces I will be needing are the wood of the handle, of course, is hardwood. That's what you want. And this piece of brass here, it's 1/4" brass. It's going to end up being the knife pins that hold the handle on. And the very bottom of the knife is going to accept another piece of brass, which I'm going to hold that on with this piece of brass here. It's got a hole in it. And the reason why that hole is there is because it will act as the lanyard on the bottom of the knife you can tie a piece of leather or string to. And once I get everything finished up, I'm going to put all the knife pieces together. And not only is the brass and this kind of thing are going to hold the knife together tight, it's also going to be epoxied together with some really good epoxy. Gorilla epoxy works great. It just fills in all the voids, it tightens everything up, and that makes the knife feel really solid. Now usually when I get close to making the knife where I want a mirror finish or close to a mirror finish, best way I've found to do that is to start with the sanding grit, which is the best you can get on these belt sanders, is about 220 grit. But then you gotta stick your knife in a vise and use some wet sanding paper. I start at the next step, 320, sand it for, 30 minutes. Move your way up to 600, 30 minutes for the sanding. Then you go to 800, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. You can actually get up to 3,000 if you really want this thing to shine. And then once you've done that step, it takes a couple hours, you can take a grinder with some buffing wheels on it, just to replace the wheels with buffing wheels, and you can buff it out, put a little bit of rouge on there, and make that thing as shiny as you want. This particular knife here is based on the old knife that Jim Bowie invented back in the day. This is basically a Bowie knife shape, a very versatile tool, and they even had mirror finishes on their knife so they could see themselves shaving, and in fact they could shave themselves with this knife. But it's a very durable knife. It's pretty thick at the back end, and it's got a nice hand guard on it. And it's got a nice pointed edge. This edge here is a false edge. The top right there is a false edge, but it looks sharpened from a distance, but it's not. It's just meant to help this thing plunge into people very fast. But this knife was meant for fighting, camping, chopping, skinning, shaving. I mean, you name it. And I left some of the forge marks in there, so it looks cool and rustic, and people would see that it's actually a hand-forged knife, yet a little bit refined, and it's pretty cool. The last thing for me to do is finish off the handle, get it sanded up and polished up, and do a final sanding. Do a final sharpening. I never final sharpen a knife until the end because, believe it or not, making knives is kind of dangerous. I mean, you drop them, a machine can catch them, and you just end up getting cut. So it's already sharp now, but it's not like razor sharp to where you can shave with it. But I don't do that until the end. That keeps everything safe. And when I make the next step, I'll see you guys next time.